Zach Elliott at Feel Free to Argue, and I wanted to just kind of ramble a bit about the financial crisis in the banks because, well, nothing much is getting fixed. And even if there are some superficial signs of life in the economy, I think we've got plenty to be worried about going forward. A lot of what I'm going to say is based on this guy named William Black, who I read an article by him recently on the Huffington Post and also saw him being interviewed on Democracy Now! And he's a guy who was involved in the savings and loan debacle way back when in the, what was that, the 1970s, 1980s? Said it was like 25 years ago, so I guess the 1980s. And he was one of the regulators who helped bring that whole fiasco down. Recently wrote a book about it. Has the great title, The Best Way to Rob a Bank is to Own One. and it's truly the case. And he's been a really solid analyst in terms of looking at what is and isn't being done in terms of our current financial meltdown. And he's just very honest about things, about the fact that we haven't done anything meaningful. They were talking about the House committee getting ready to release finally some potential regulation of derivatives. And I thought it was very telling because much in the same way that when Baucus held the hearing about the future of healthcare reform, he deliberately excluded all proponents of single payer. When Barney Frank was holding the hearings about regulating derivatives, he stacked the panel once again. The guy there, Black, was talking about how there were 10 people who showed up, that were called by the committee. 9 of them were from the industry and said derivatives were wonderful and safe and we didn't have to do anything to regulate them and everything was just fine, thank you. And then there was one guy who expressed some mild concern about them, and he was kind of gavelled into silence by the committee, unlike the other people. So there you go. That's your democracy in America, circa 2009, people who from the industry who want something get to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and when somebody says word one about maybe that isn't the best idea, they're immediately shouted down. So we're in a very dangerous situation. Was also seeing a longish talk by Nomi Prins. She's a former investment banker who now is kind of talking out about the dangers of, what's going on in the investment banking area. And she was just talking, and this is like a recent talk by her, she was talking about how all of the craziness is starting up again. All the banks are now once again to the point of being as leveraged as they're legally allowed to be, or more so. So they're all at or beyond the limits that have been set, and already the limits in terms of what they need to do and like the amount of reserves they need to hold in order to basically cover their bets are just ludicrous. They're ludicrous. I think the current ratio is 40-1. So that means for every $40 of crazy bets you got going out there, you only have to have $1 to back it up. Yeah. So, how you all feeling? You ready to bail out the banks again? Because, Bank of America still hasn't recovered. Oh, most interesting thing that the guy pointed out today, actually, was that, you've heard about like these record profits that are being made by Goldman Sachs and Citigroup, not so much Bank of America. Um, want to know what those are largely due to? Accounting tricks. Yeah, accounting tricks. What's going on? And he talked about this in great detail in the Democracy Now! Thing. But what basically happened was the industry went to Congress a couple of years ago and says, you know what? We don't want to report losses associated with the housing industry. What can we do about this? Hey, tell you what, how about this? Even if something is going to be foreclosed on, even if we're going to be foreclosing on a house, even if we know the people are not going to pay and that we're going to have to foreclose at some point, until we actually foreclose on it, we don't have to show it as a loss on our books. No matter, how unlikely it is that they're ever going to pay, and even if our own, standards basically say that we have no chance of getting this money, until we actually foreclose on the property, we don't have to carry it as a loss. And so, the situation you have now, the reason why that's useful to them is the ratio of homes that could be in foreclosure but they're not foreclosing on to the overall total of homes is higher than it's ever been. The banks are holding on to all of these homes and refusing to foreclose on them. Why? Because that way they don't have to show it as a loss on their books. Why? Because all of the people who are getting these record bonuses, what do you think those bonuses are calculated off of? Of course, the profits of the company. So if you artificially inflate the profits of the company, it's party time again. We are just getting boned so many ways. And I mean, they were asking about the outrage on the show. Well, what about the outrage? We just bailed these idiots out just last year. And you'd think people would be mad about this shit. And as Black put it, they are so, in the government, they are so unconcerned by public outrage that they are not even attempting to hide anything. So, I mean, all this stuff is like a matter of public knowledge. I mean, as Nomi Prins put it, you can find all this stuff. You have to do a little bit of waiting. But, she's got a website associated with, her book, which she was, flogging. That's what the whole talk was about. But, all the indicators really are showing that these institutions are not healthy. And, the public face of that, if the public face is that they're not that healthy, the reality is that it's much, much, much worse than that. Like Black is saying. I mean, there's so much that they're hiding. The stress tests, as Nomi Prins pointed out, were completely useless. And the banks basically got to fill out their own forms. It's like, are you healthy? Yeah, my bank is really healthy. Well, how healthy is it? Well, super terrifically healthy? That sound good? Sure. Whatever you say, And if you go belly up, hey, you don't have to worry about it. Your good friends, the American public, will always be there. Because you're too big to fail. You're too big to fail. Couldn't let you fail. Even if you're robbing from us. Even if you're total fuck-ups. Even if you contribute nothing to the real economy. You contribute something to the political economy, though. You do. You contribute a lot. And that's why these parasites are going to be allowed to continue to live. Because they're paying off the right people. And because of that, we will continue to get boned. And people are not going to yell and cry about it because, hey, that's their 401k. Pretty depressing. Anyway, there you go. Have a great weekend, folks. This is Zach Elliott at Feel Free to Argue.